Hey guys, this is going to be a video on Gen 3 Glock clones and why we're allowed to manufacture them and why we're allowed to buy them now. Glock was designed in 1979, and I believe the first prototype was made in 1982, and the first Glock was sold in America in 1986. I'm pretty sure that Gen 3 came out in 1998. If I'm wrong about that, check me in the comments and I will respond and appreciate it. But US patent law protects a patent for 20 years, and then you've got to do something to update that patent to keep it live and active. And Glock somehow let that expire. And not only did they let that expire, they didn't even let it expire in the 20-year time frame. So I believe it was 2001, is when they messed up and allowed the patent to expire early. And so from like 2001 to 2002, a bunch of companies started making Gen 3 clones because they realized that Glock had messed up. And so Glock spent those years in legal battles with the companies that did that. And turns out that the courts sided with the companies and said, nope, your patent's expired, they can make these. So we have a bunch of Gen 3 clones now. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I do have a few here on the table. None of these are technically clones. A lot of them are just based off of Gen 3 technology, but for all practical purposes, they're clones. What I have here is an FMK C9. I will show that it's clear. And this is made in California. It's a pretty terrible gun, very cheap. You might have seen it at your local stores for a very low price. I believe like $200 is like the going price for these. They're not good. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. Then you have the Palmetto State Dagger. Obviously, I've got an optic and a light on here, but it is also clear. And these run for like $260 if you buy the parts separately and assemble them, up to like $350, depending on how you purchase the firearm and what sales are going on. And then we have the Ruger RXM, and these go from $350 to $400, depending on where you buy them and what sales. And obviously we just have a regular, not a Gen 3, but a Gen 5 Glock here just for representation. It is also clear. And I have this out on the table just to show you kind of some of the manufacturing on it, why it seems to be like a little nicer quality than some of the other ones. Obviously Gen 5, the internals are going to be what kind of differs there though. So like a lot of the finish here, it's going to be very similar to a Gen 3. We have FDE as opposed to the just regular blackened blued finish of a Glock. This is going to kind of be what it looks like on a Gen 3 Glock. So nothing special there, but this is what the slide is going to look like essentially for a Gen 3. It's going to be very boxy looking like that, rounded back ends, very flat on top, flat on the sides. Some will have, I don't think any Gen 3s do have front side serrations. So just usually the back, sometimes they're angled, sometimes they're not. But there we go. And then we have the RXM, which does actually have front serrations. The RXM is the best example of a Gen 3 clone that has modern features on it. So it has a modular optic system. It's got a modular just trigger system on the inside. The serial number is part of the internal part, so you can swap out the frames. I think this is a really good bang for your buck, $350. I would advise, if you are going to get a clone, to get an RXM or possibly a Dagger. Something like this or a firearm made in Turkey is not really great. The California company that made this, FMK, they've made a terrible gun. For the price, maybe 5-6 years ago, this might have been okay at $200, but what you're getting is a pretty terrible gun that jams up a lot. I know that people will say that guns need like a 500 round break-in period. This gun, straight out of the box, I believe it has a 10-round proprietary magazine, was unable to cycle all 10 rounds. In fact, it was unable to cycle most of the 10 rounds. So I think we had 7 jams out of 10. And then after polishing the feed ramp a bunch, I was able to get it to cycle more reliably, but it's still not great. I've fired this probably 1,000 times since purchasing it, and it is just a non-functional gun for the most part. It does sort of function now. But I would advise, if you're going to spend this kind of money, just get up like $50 more, get a dagger. It's not going to be a huge improvement. It will feed, it'll shoot. It's going to be better. Has an optics cut. No optics cut on this, obviously. If you are very strapped for cash and you find yourself in need of a gun, this is going to be better than a High Point, in my opinion. I would go for this over a High Point, but everything else is going to be better than that. Okay, so proprietary mags. This has a metal, very cheap proprietary mag. This is a Gen 5, or not even a Gen 5. I believe this is a Gen 4 because Gen 5 doesn't fit in the current 19X system. But this is a actual Glock mag. It'll look very much like a P mag, and you can see the difference right away. The locking systems are a lot different. Like the cutout is an actual cutout. There's just a piece missing in the frame, and you can see the spring in there. The spring, very audible, very loose in there. The follower, I should say, is loose in there. Just not great. So with a bad magazine and a bad feed ramp combined, it's just a nightmare. The Palmetto State accepts PMags from Magpul, and they work great. And the Ruger RXM has its own mags, but I believe they also fit PMags because the frame is set for Magpul. So Magpul makes this frame. Okay, so what does the whole like Gen 3 Glock clone fiasco tell us about what's happening with Glock right now? So my thought is that when Glock discontinued their Gen 3, Gen 4, and Gen 5 because of the whole California state thing, potentially going into the future, Gen 4s and Gen 5s might not continue their patents. Glock is in a situation where they can continue making guns, I think, because I think you have to make an update to the firearm to continue the patent. And so if they're discontinuing them, the patent might expire. So whenever the last time they renewed the patent, however many years to get to 20 might make it so that we can manufacture those guns. So I have no idea what's going to go on with that. I don't know if Glock is going to realize that the Model V is probably not the best move or not, if they're going to continue making minor updates or do some legal jargon like Disney does with their characters. But it is possible that within the next, 15 to 20 years, we could see Gen 4 and Gen 5 clones. So that's exciting. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, drop a comment. I will respond. And thanks for watching, guys.